Marketer of the Day, number 490. Productivity and Lifestyle Secrets of Top Performers. Reduce overwhelm, outsource weaknesses, and achieve ultimate freedom with Carey Bentley.
Hey everyone, we're so glad that you're listening. We're talking right now with Carey Bentley, and Carey is the CEO of Lifehack Bootcamp.com, which is the top-ranked online productivity company, and she shows overachievers how to bring sanity back into their lives, and her team has shown hundreds of people the techniques they need to be maximally effective at work and in their personal lives. So lots of fun stuff to talk about. How are things today, Carey?
Hey, they're great, Robert. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, I mean, glad to unpack some interesting things and hear what you have going on. So yeah, life hacking. Can you kind of catch us up and tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, definitely. So, my husband and I, Demir, started this company about 3 years ago. And before this, we were leading very, very different lives. My husband was working on Wall Street in real estate finance, working 80-hour weeks. I was working in corporate brand management, managing billion-dollar brands, also working 80 hours a week. And quite frankly, we're really getting burned out by it all. And what we like to say is that if life is like a Rubik's Cube, we were really good at solving for the career side, but only at the expense of all the other sides, like our relationships, our health, our happiness, our hobbies, you name it. We were not making time for those things. And finally, we actually had a really scary health diagnosis. Because we would have kept going on like that, like most of us do, just pushing on. But we both got very severe stress-related illnesses. And our doctors told us, sat us down and they were like, you're either going to have some really painful surgeries or you're going to die an early death. And we all know people, who have been taken away way too early by a sudden heart attack or a stroke or whatever. And so I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to this. And so that, fortunately for us, came early on in our lives. And we had this moment where we were like, okay, this is our chance. This is our chance to forge a completely new way of living and working where we can have all the success that we've always wanted, but without those long hours. And so that's when we started life hacking. And that's kind of our definition of the term. It's not really about using a toilet paper roll in 100 different ways. It's more about how can we solve for all of the sides of this Rubik's Cube that life is at the same time rather than just one side.
Well, I love it. Basically, having your cake and eating it too, right? Because like we only have the same amount of time in the day as literally everyone else in the world, but we don't want to just be sitting around all day wasting time. So it would be great to be able to somehow make time for all those things that matter and still have that quiet time to take a break and reflect, but then also be able to really crush it as far as our careers or our businesses or whatever, and generate the money that we want. So it'd be great to basically have that income from that 80-hour a week job, but also basically being on vacation all the time, right? I mean, that's like the ideal lifestyle.
Exactly. And I think the breakthrough moment for us came when we realized it wasn't a choice between being successful and unhappy or being unsuccessful, but, poor and kind of a fool, that was kind of not the only two options available, that there was a third path where we could be working like we do now, about 30 hours a week. We travel full time. We've been to 18 countries in the last 2 years. We've been growing a 6-figure business, nearly 7 figures. And we're actually making an impact in the world. And in our free time, we dance salsa, we do Pilates, we're learning Spanish. So we're actually doing all these things that we've always wanted to be doing.
Well, fantastic. So to go from, that one extreme of being unhappy to now, you kind of do all these different things that you listed and, you kind of enjoy life. Like, do you think was it one specific thing that made the difference, or like a lot of little things, or a handful of things? Like, what's kind of the difference between then and now?
The biggest difference, I would say, is that we were willing to really get committed and hit rock bottom. And I think a lot of people have stories in their life when they just get fed up with something. They had their Office Space moment. If you've seen that 90s movie, it's one of my favorite movies. And they decide that the current state of their life is no longer acceptable to them. And so the faster you can reach that moment, then what's going to happen is you're going to realize that there's a lot more options available to you. And you're going to be able to start making big decisions and taking big leaps and trying new things that are really going to improve your life.
And that's a really interesting way of looking at it, that, if things are getting really bad, then it's like, great, now I'm finally at the point where I'm willing to try new things. And maybe if things are sort of mediocre and sort of on the downhill slide, it's like, all right, well, if you keep on trying to, prop yourself up, you're just really delaying the inevitable. So that's a little reassuring. Number one, like looking back at, because we've all dealt with this where, there's like a rough patch in life, right? In whatever kind of capacity. And it's like, well, the rough patch was good because if you had sort of skated around the rough patch, or if you just like, tried to power through it anyway, then, this might have just wasted even more time. So, I mean, that's really good to know that, like, sometimes we hit rock bottom, and even if right now things seem hopeless and really bad, well, that's good because now you have these opportunities that are open to you, and maybe you would have considered or gone down new avenues that maybe your pride would have gotten in the way before, or you would have told yourself you were too busy to try something else. And I mean, even like this thing with your health scare, I mean, I hear about things like that, all the time, from people I know, where like, it's just like, you think everything's going great and you think that, you can just be a workaholic all your life, but then that one health scare sort of slows you down. And it's like, well, that was a sign, like that was meant to be, because now you kind of branch off into these other things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to ask yourself, like, is this exactly the way I want to be living? And, if I was to be taken tomorrow, like, am I going to be satisfied with that? So a little bit of a morbid way of thinking about it. But then, for me, it was really helpful, for example, in a time in my life when I had a really bad manager. We've all had bad managers before, right? Like they really put a damper on our entire lives. And this particular manager was like so bad, so bad, like just manager nightmare level stories. And now I'm actually so grateful, because if I had had a really great manager, I wouldn't have wanted to finally quit that job and start my own business. And I'm so grateful that I did that 3 years later.
Yeah, and I mean, and I can relate to that too, as far as like kind of being in a job where I didn't really hate, but like, definitely wasn't fulfilled, wasn't satisfied with. And at the time I was like, okay, well, I'm sort of not in a place I want to be, but that's okay, because now I have the motivation of planning my way out. And if I had been making like tons of money, been super happy, then I would have been maybe like trapped in there for longer. But yeah, like sort of being in a bad situation in whatever context definitely can be the motivation to say, all right, well, I know that I'm not happy with things now. I don't want to just suddenly, quit right now, but at least I'm motivated to make a plan to change things. And so, one thing I'm really curious about is, as far as like the differences between being, workaholic mode, and now it seems like you and your husband are more fulfilled. Like, is there anything different as far as like your the mindset of you two, or like, do you have better systems in place, better like scheduling, organization, any differences like that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So many. But I do want to tackle the mindsets thing first, because I think that's really genius that you just brought that up. That's something that a lot of people miss about time management, but it's actually one of the most important elements of time management. And I think before, we used to feel like we were not in control of our time. We used to think that our jobs were in control of our time, or our boss was in control, or, our kids were in control, or whatever, your significant other is in control. And this is a really common, what we call limiting mindset, that a lot of our clients are faced with. Because when you have that attitude, what essentially you're saying is that I'm a victim to other people, and I do not have ownership over my own time. And that leaves you no solutions, right? If you're a victim to any situation in life, then you're not going to be able to create an innovative or creative solution to that problem. And so the second we decided, hey, that's actually a really limiting mindset, we're actually in complete control of our time. We're not slaves. No one's telling us what to do. If they're telling us what to do, then we're choosing to do it. So we are choosing when we get up in the morning. We are choosing how we spend our time. We are choosing which meetings we want to be in. And so once we shifted our mindset from, someone else controls my time, to we are in 100% ownership of our time, then that was really what made the biggest difference in terms of, the number of hours we were working per day and what we were spending our time on.
Interesting. Yes, a new way of looking at it, and I love that concept that like the victim thinking, like takes the responsibility off of us, and it's like it's kind of weird because it doesn't feel that way, right? It's like, well, all these things are happening to me, and I'm totally out of control, so I might as well just skate by, or I might as well just kind of let things slide one more day. And I mean, you're so right. We don't have to put up with it, even if it's like we're in this job we don't like. Well, you can always quit if there's something happens to you that you don't like. Well, then you can control the way that you react to it, or that way that you feel to it, and you can come up with these innovative and creative solutions as soon as you finally take the responsibility, take the ownership of, I mean, like you said, if you're in a job you hate, well, you chose to get into that job, you chose to go to that job, and then I love it. I love the change in thinking there.
Yeah, and I like what you were just saying just now, because I'm not talking about, regular ownership, like, things that are just under your control naturally, like time. I'm talking about making it extreme ownership, which means, irrational ownership, which means that, say your boss wants you to work on all these projects. He assigns you, a lot of projects every week. And you could be like, well, I can't help that. I mean, Carey, what are you telling me? Like, that I have to tell my boss no to some things? Well, first of all, yes, you can absolutely do that. But having extreme ownership over something means having ownership over it, even if it makes no sense for you to have ownership over it. So just want to create that distinction as well there.
Okay, great. And something that you just mentioned there was like, we might be in a situation where we just have like too much on our plate, too much in front of us. And I don't know about you, but in more recent years, I've been maybe a little more, I guess, conservative about what I know I could accomplish. And maybe it was just like teenager arrogance or something, but 10, 15 years ago, I told myself that I could get so much done in one day. And I told myself that if I had 10, 20 things done, I was like, yeah, no problem, I can do that. And I think that I wasn't really aware of maybe that I wasn't getting so much done, and maybe I would get like a little bit done on each little project. And I told myself, well, great, I went through 20 things today. And I realize now, like, well, I did 20 little things that don't matter. And it seems like in more recent years that I've been doing less. And if I have all these things in front of me, I can maybe take a more honest look at it and say, well, there's like these 10 things, and I'm not going to get that done in one day. I might get that done in a week. So maybe today I'll only focus on maybe 2 or 3 of those things. So, I mean, can you relate to that? Or have you noticed anything sort of like that maybe like it's really easy to fail if our eyes are bigger than our stomach?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great point, Robert. And actually, there's finding now that one of the biggest correlations between top performers versus low performers is top performers always get their number one priority done every week. And so instead of, like you were saying, just doing busy work or getting some small tasks done, they are laser focused on just the top 1 to 3 things that are going to drive them forward. And so we actually use a tool that we call the champagne moment to help us figure out what is our number one priority every week and every month and even every year. So that we can identify it. Because, looking at your life, you probably think, well, I have a huge list of priorities. I've got 10 priorities on my list right now. I have to tackle all of them. But the truth is, the word priority comes from the Latin word which comes before. And so you can't have multiple things that come before each other. We need to create a ladder of which one comes first, which one comes second, which one comes third. And so this champagne moment tool is designed to help you do that. It's designed to help you figure out what is the thing that is the most leveraged for you this week. And so we like to ask what we call the focusing question as well, which is derived from Gary Keller's focusing question from his book, The One Thing, which is, what's one thing I could do such that by doing it, it makes everything else easier or unnecessary? And so another way to rephrase this to make it a little bit easier to think about, because that's a little bit of a mouthful for me at least, is what's one thing I could do that if I got it done this week, I could go home and I would legitimately feel like cracking open a bottle of champagne and celebrating. It would make me feel so accomplished and so proud of myself. It would move my business, my life forward in such a significant way that I could legitimately celebrate it at the end of the week.
Awesome, I love it. So you choose that one thing where you can celebrate it at the end of the week, and it makes everything else on that you have to do either irrelevant or easier to do. And so, I mean, are there any problems people run into when choosing that one thing? Like, is it easy to maybe choose something that's super humongous and then they only get a little piece of it done, or is it easy to maybe choose that number one thing and then not follow through? Are those easy traps to fall into sometimes?
Definitely, yeah, because you could easily choose a champagne moment that's just too big. And so the way to size your champagne moment just right is it has to be something you can do by Tuesday. So if it's Sunday right now and you're sitting and you're planning your week, then your champagne moment you should be able to get it done with 100% focus, assuming nothing else goes wrong. You should be able to get it done by Tuesday. And so what's going to happen is, life is going to happen. Some unwanted work is going to get thrown on your plate. Things aren't going to go exactly as you planned them, but it's still okay because you have plenty of time to get your champagne moment done by the end of the week.
And so yeah, is there a reason why it's set to Tuesday? Is that maybe like so that even if the worst happens, we'll still get it done by Thursday or Friday?
Exactly. So, and with our clients, now they're so good at planning their week and really, accommodating unexpected work that they're able to get 3 or 4 champagne moments done in a week. So once you get your first one done, even on Monday morning, you could get your champagne moment done, and then you can reload. You can choose another champagne moment. And so it's not just that you're choosing one thing per week, it's just that you're choosing the one thing you're going to do first.
Awesome. Yeah, the one thing to do first before everything else distracts you, right?
Exactly. Yes, because what we like to say is until my champagne moment is done, everything else is a distraction. And I know you can relate to this, Robert, because today in our society, with the amount of technology that we're expected to use, it's become easier and easier for us to get distracted and interrupted. So, we have this 24/7 culture. We're always on. People are allowed to message us on email, on chat, on Slack, on all these different platforms. And so it can really feel like our time is being snatched away from us in these little increments. So what we have to do is get on the offense and start defending our time and start saying no to these distractions, start turning our phone on Do Not Disturb, turning off our email, because if we don't do that, then it's not going to be possible for us to really get into that deep, focused work where we're actually getting things done.
Oh yeah, and I can definitely relate to that, to having a really beautiful plan or knowing exactly what I want to do on a specific day, and then like, I mean, I'll admit it, I slip up all the time. I'll jump in the morning and I'll say I want to get some things done, and next thing I know, the phone's lighting up and I'm like, oh, let me just check Facebook for a couple of minutes, let me check my email, and then an hour passes and I'm thinking, I don't even remember what I set out to do on the computer just because everything else distracted me, and I'm totally in a different state of mind by the time I finish. And then that's a good reminder for me that like sort of like you alluded to there, I have to shut stuff off and maybe, I guess, digital detox for a couple of hours, even though it sounds sort of weird to say, but yeah, definitely and I mean, it seems like it's gotten a lot worse in the past decade. Like, I'm so glad that I'm the age that I am, because if I was like high school age now or college age now, I mean, I'm pretty much convinced that I would have flunked out of every single class that I was in because of all the distractions of like, how the heck do you get anything done with all the things going off around you?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure everyone listening right now can totally resonate with that, because it's true. I mean, the average person checks their phone 150 times per day. And the average office worker gets interrupted or distracted once every 7 minutes. And so if you think about the numbers, I mean, just the tidal wave of distractions that we have to overcome is so significant that actually now, what a lot of theorists are saying is that focus and the ability, like the muscle of focus, is the number one skill that knowledge workers can have today. So Cal Newport, who's the author of Deep Work, is a big advocate of this. And he says that literally, like, hey, if you want to be competitive in the economy forever, then learn how to focus, learn how to block distractions, because it's something that no one else is going to be able to do.
Right. It'll really make you stand out. Yeah. And so, one thing that I'm really curious about as you're explaining like all these different, breakthroughs and strategies you have and things like that, do you have like a way to start the day really, really well? Like, do you have like a morning routine or anything like that to really make sure that that, the day doesn't get away from you?
Yeah, Robert. So the way I start out my morning is very simple. I am not a huge fan of a lengthy morning routine. I know they're so in vogue right now, but I do start out my day in a very specific way. First of all, I wake up quite early. I wake up around 5:30 in the morning, and what we do is my husband and I share three gratitudes with each other. And gratitudes have been studied recently, and the power of gratitudes is just phenomenal. I mean, if you want to get every day started off on the right foot, feeling empowered, feeling positive, then gratitudes are the way to do it, because it has been shown that just reciting gratitudes has almost the same effect as taking antidepressants in people who are depressed. And
Oh, wow.
so exactly. So it's so powerful just to think in the first thing in the morning, no matter how many bombs are going off, how many fires have been started, hey, what are three things I'm grateful for? And so that's how I start my day. We get the bed made. We work from home, so there's no commute or anything like that. And we dive right in and we start pre-planning our day and getting started with our top priorities.
Well, great. And I mean, do you have any examples of those gratitudes, or is that personal stuff?
Yeah, we try to make them different every day. It's not as effective if you just choose the same things every single day. But yeah, I mean, for example, today a couple of the ones I shared were, hey, I'm so grateful that we're living in Colombia right now. Like, it's such an amazing opportunity that we have our own business, and we're able to live in this beautiful country, and travel to these different places all around the world. So it's whatever you're feeling in that moment. It could be something small. It could be, hey, I'm really grateful that the weather is nice today, because that means I'm going to be able to take a walk, and it's going to be sunny and it's going to be beautiful. And it could be really big, like the other one I shared.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's lots of different ideas there about like it can be something as simple as just the weather. I love it. And something that you mentioned there, well, a couple things in there is that you and your husband work from home, but you also travel to all these great places, like you're in Colombia right now, and it seems like it would be super tempting to just like hang out, on the beach or in the jungle or in the mountains or something, and then that the whole working from home thing, same thing, right? It would be really tempting to kind of procrastinate every single day. So do you have any specific strategies of kind of staying on task, even if there's like a beautiful world around you, or even if you're working from home and there's kind of no boss looking over your shoulder? Any ideas and tips there?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great point, because we think about it like very differently. And I know actually the studies do show that when you start working from home for the first time, your productivity goes up, but then very soon afterwards, it can decline actually, because of those things. You're just settling into your usual routine. There's no one looking over your shoulder, all that sort of thing. The way we do it is that we actually lean into it. So if we're in a new location and we want to go and explore, then great. What we're going to do is we're going to schedule a bunch of activities in the afternoon, and we're going to get all ready to get out there. And what that does is it forces us to get our work done in a very short amount of time. And that's the reward. So after we get our work done, we're so excited, because now we're rewarding ourselves by being able to go and do all these fun activities. And so we actually have it work for us rather than against us. And the way I would recommend people do this just in their day-to-day lives is to schedule their downtime. Don't just leave it open for, Netflix and YouTube. Actually schedule dinners with your friends, and schedule activities that you want to go to and performances you want to see, so that then you're really motivated to get that work done and shut your laptop and get on with your life.
That makes perfect sense in a bunch of ways. Like, just number one, that you have that time crunch. So it's like, well, if there's a hard stop at 3 p.m., we got to get out the door. Then it's like when you're about to go on a trip somewhere. It's like, oh, I got to get all this stuff done before I go on a trip. And somehow it works out where you're super focused in those limited hours, and just because you're in a mad rush. But then it sounds like by having the strategy, it establishes like that reward pattern, that like, okay, I'm doing all the business stuff I need to do, but then there's a reward after as my plan. And like you said, because you scheduled that downtime, you don't just fall into the usual stuff of like, oh, well, let's see what's on TV, or let's just kind of like hang out and play cards. You do those fun things because you only have one life. You can't repeat it. So yeah, that's pretty cool that that you have that reward scheduled in there. So that way it's like you're not just racing to watch TV. You actually put in all the energy in your business, and then put in all the energy in having fun. It's awesome.
Yeah, we call it being extreme. So rather than having like a balance between work and life, what we say is just be extreme with both. So when you're at work, be extremely at work. Don't let your attention be pulled to other stuff in your personal life. Just be, racing the clock, trying to get as much of your big priorities done as you can before it's time to shut your laptop and then go home. And when you're at home, being extremely present with your family, thinking about how you can make every single hour with them a precious memory rather than it just being like, oh, I'm going to go and watch TV. Another thing is being extreme with your self-care. So rather than, again, with the TV example, but rather than watching TV, how can you actually really refuel your body and make yourself very rejuvenated? Can I get a massage? Can I go to the spa? Can I meditate for 30 minutes? All of these activities are actually rejuvenating, whereas, just vegging out is not.
Yeah, and what I'm kind of hearing from you a lot is that as silly as and simple as it sounds to have a written plan, I mean, it's so important, even if it's just a quick, here are what my plans are, because it kind of makes me think of like, if you don't have a budget for your money, you're just going to spend everything that comes in. And same thing with the time in your day. If you don't have plans for later in the day, it's going to end up being something kind of blah, something kind of unplanned. So I mean, it makes perfect sense to maybe plan those things and maybe even look into the things that we've always wanted to do, right? Like, when's the last time you got a massage? When's the last time you went to the spa or went for a walk or exercise? So I mean, yeah, this all makes perfect sense to kind of think things through ahead of time and make a plan, so that way you don't just drift through life. That way you happen to life doesn't happen to you, right?
Exactly. I mean, pre-planning is literally the golden ticket for anyone wanting, one thing they should start doing immediately. It's simply planning, a week or a month ahead. So a great example is like, okay, scheduling your downtime. Well, these awesome dinners, meeting cool new friends isn't going to happen without a little bit of planning. You got to send some invites out. You got to meet some new people, invite them to dinner, make the dinner reservation. So if it's the day of, you're going to forget it. You're going to order takeout and sit inside. And same thing with pretty much everything in your life, from work to, who's going to be picking up the kids to how am I going to be planning my vacations. All of these things are made so much better with just a little bit of pre-planning.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, what do they say? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So some of these plans don't happen instantly. So if we just look at the week ahead or the month ahead and put a few things on the calendar and get the ball rolling on some of the preparations that need to happen, then yeah, we're just a little bit of advanced thinking. We can have the life we want just because we planned it out ahead of time. So, I mean, this is all great stuff, and I'm sure that a lot of people listening are getting a lot of value out of it, and maybe, changing the ways that they're thinking and picking up a few tidbits of how they can, revolutionize their life and maybe break the cycle, the pattern of kind of mediocrity. And so I'm sure that a lot of people kind of have their interest peaked now, and they want to know what you're up to and what kind of things you have going on. So can you drop some links for us and tell us, if people heard our conversation today about productivity and life hacks and like just being a better person in general, and they want to head over and check out some resources from you, I mean, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So we get this question so much, and we're so passionate about providing a lot of free trainings for our clients that we have them all stored over on our website on lifehackbootcamp.com. That's lifehackbootcamp.com. You can access a bunch of free trainings we have about how to improve your focus, how to get outsourcing working for you, how to start designing your lifestyle. We also have a really great a summary for you of our top 7 time management books. These are books that we have read and reread multiple times. We consider them our productivity Bibles, and we give away right on our website 7 videos where we've summarized them and given you the exact action steps you need to take to implement their knowledge into your life.
Super great. I love that idea because, I mean, the time management books that are out there, it almost feels like diet books, right? Like there seems like there's a new one every day and everyone has their own take. And
Yeah.
and sometimes it can be confusing about like, well, which one should I jump in first, or what am I in for when I do this? And so that's a great idea. So that way someone can just hop on over there at lifehackbootcamp.com and check out those top 7 time management books. And that way they can see what they're getting themselves into. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people out there, maybe they've already read things like, The One Thing or Eat That Frog or 4 Hour Work Week or things like that. Maybe they've already read some of these things and they're like, well, I read it, but that was a while ago, or I didn't really implement. And so by having those videos that you said that they have, I mean, that sounds like a great concept where now they can see it in action and they can get that little bit of an extra push to actually implement the things they've learned about, as opposed to just picking up some facts and figures. That's boring. What's more exciting is actually implementing. So, I mean, yeah, great stuff. Lifehackbootcamp.com to get the training on how to focus, outsource, delegate, and have the lifestyle that you want. And so we'll see everyone right over there, lifehackbootcamp.com. And thanks so much, Carey, for stopping by and being super honest and vulnerable with us and sharing some interesting stories and giving us some great advice on what we need to do in order to make the most out of our life. We only have the one. We don't know how many Saturdays are left in it. Could be thousands, could be 1, could be 0. So what's the point in waiting for things to turn around magically on their own? We need to, some of us need to maybe take life by the reins and do all those things that we've already wished we wanted to do. So lifehackbootcamp.com. And I appreciate you very much, Carey, for stopping by and sharing all this great stuff.
Thanks so much for having me, Robert. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to today's program. Start from the beginning or view past episodes at marketeroftheday.com/episodes.